Hey, folks, and welcome into episode 12 of the Longhorn Mailbag. No true false this week as we're on bye. I went 3-2 last week in the Oklahoma true false, so I can definitely use the bye week as well. So instead, we're just going to jump right into questions first from Longhorn SD. Which game remaining on the schedule concerns you the most? At the start of the season, it was Kansas State for me, but as we've kind of gone along now and we're halfway through the year, I'm really struggling to find a big reason to be concerned for a lot of the games left on the schedule, just because this Texas team has shown me that they can win games at home, they can win games on the road, and they have the capability to win games down the stretch when things get close and they're necessarily not playing their best. They didn't do that last week against Oklahoma, but they have done it in weeks prior. So we all know that Texas is going to get every opponent's best shot. It's their last year in the conference. They're a top 10 team. So you're going to get the A game from all of your opponents. So that kind of right now leads me to conclude, and before you start yelling at me, let me explain why as well. I'm going Iowa State right now. And again, before you yell at me, yes, I know that they lost to Ohio University a couple of weeks back, but since then, they've been playing pretty well. They're 3-1 at home. Their only loss at home coming to Iowa, and the only other loss on their schedule being to Oklahoma by 30 points. Yes, you want to forget about that, but other than that, they've played well. They just beat TCU. They're, as I mentioned, they're 3-1 at home. Ames is a place where Texas has struggled in years past. They've lost 3 out of the last 4 there. Last time Steve Sarkisian was there, they lost big. So it's a tough place to play, and Matt Campbell always has his guys ready to go, even despite the fact of everything that's going on there with the gambling issues nowadays as well. Still has his guys ready to go, and he's still winning games. Iowa State looks like a top half Big 12 team so far this season, and I think that playing in Ames with the way that Iowa State plays defense, with that flyover safety defense, will also cause some issues, as it has in the past for Steve Sarkisian. Remember, the Longhorns didn't play too well at home against Iowa State last year. So for right now, I'm looking at Iowa State as the quote-unquote trap game maybe to be concerned about going forward. But you can make a case for a lot of other teams as well. Next up from T-Man for Life. Seems like last season, with Xavier Worthy, the offense took a lot of shots downfield. But now, with more options to stretch the field, there aren't as many shots taken. So why is that? Well, quite frankly, I think it's just because there's no need for it. You don't need to take a shot downfield because Quinn Ewers is so good at working the middle of the field and the intermediate game, not having to throw the ball 15 yards plus, but finding his sweet spot in that 5 to 14 yard range. Now, we saw Quinn Ewers' most efficient day moving the ball last week against Oklahoma. We know about the 3 turnovers, and that ultimately was a big reason why Texas lost the game. But if you take those out of the equation, he moved the ball around very well. 84% completion percentage, that's a career high. And in that 5 to 14 yard completion range, he completed 13 of 15 of those passes, which is good for 87% for 178 yards. So that spot of the field is where Quinn Ewers is at his best, and it allows those talented wide receivers like Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell, Jatavian Sanders to get the ball in space and be able to move around with it. So if that's moving the ball downfield for you offensively, you don't really need to take those 50-50 balls down the field where Texas has struggled a little bit trying to get those down. I know Steve Sarkisian wanted to make that a part of his offense, but at the same time, if the intermediate game in that 5 to 14 yard range is working for you, it makes your quarterback comfortable, you just keep harping on that and continue to move down the field. Now, the only thing with that is Texas needs to find a way to be able to convert more in the red zone. One of the worst teams in the Big 12 when it comes to scoring touchdowns in the red zone, I think right around or under 50% so far this season. They need to find a way to get the ball into the end zone once they cross the 20-yard line. Next up from YDoc81, should Texas have brought in an offensive lineman in the portal in the last 2 years? This is a really good question. I had to think about this one for a while, and I kind of came to the conclusion that no, I don't think they needed to. Just because when Steve Sarkisian came to Texas, he kind of realized, hey, why do we have more scholarship wide receivers than offensive linemen? And then went right to work on it. He signed guys like Kelvin Banks, DJ Campbell, Cole Hudson, and now if you're looking to head into last class, Trevor Gooseby, Peyton Kirkland. So he's loading up on talent in that offensive lineman room, and we have seen the depth pay off for him. We're coming into the season, Kyle Flood said there was about 8 guys that they could throw into a rotation, and they had to use that. on Saturday against Oklahoma when Connor Robertson came into the game for Jake Majors with an injury. Didn't play his best, but for a guy who needed to play 70-plus snaps in his first real game action in one of the biggest college football games of the year for either team, he played considerably well, and Steve Sarkisian commended him for that. This is a Texas offensive line that has depth, and there really isn't a need for a transfer portal guy over the last 2 years just because of what Steve Sarkisian has been able to build there. Obviously, Cole Hudson, I think, would have been the starting center, and Steve Sarkisian said that in his press conference had he been healthy. But that's what the bye week is for, getting healthy. And speaking of getting healthy, that leads into our final question from Texas Eagles 55. How is Texas on the injury front? Well, from what we heard on Monday from Steve Sarkisian's press conference, we know more about Jake Majors and Ryan Watts next week. They're going to take it easy this week, be out of practice. We'll find out more about their statuses next week. Jatavian Sanders was not on a pitch count against Oklahoma. It was more just to monitor how he was moving. Steve Sarkisian said there were some stretches where he played good, some stretches where he kind of wants back. But just to see how he was moving, now Jatavian will have some time to rest and hopefully be good to go for Texas against Houston. And lastly, our own Chip Brown reported that Cole Hudson is expected to make his return against the Cougars when the Longhorns come back to action next Saturday. That's going to do it for episode 12 of the Longhorn Mailbag. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you're the first to know when new content heads your way. For the rest of the crew, I'm Tommy Yarrish. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.